Saskatchewan is praising the federal government for reaching a free trade agreement with Europe. But our next guest is in Toronto today to give a speech to the Asia Pacific Foundation about why there's much more work to be done on that trade file. We're now joined by Brad Wall, Premier of Saskatchewan. Premier, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about where we really do stand as it relates to Canada and our relationship with Asia right now.
Sure. Well, I guess our message today to the Asia Pacific Foundation is this. If you like the EU trade deal, you're going to really like an Asian trade deal or freer trade in Asia. Looking outwards towards 2018, their GDP is going to grow at twice the rate of Europe's. Their population by 2025 will have grown by 550 million. Europe's population is going to decline. Ours will have grown by 50 million. So as Wayne Gretzky used to say, that's where the puck is going to be, and we need to be very much focused in the region. So that means moving forward on a trade deal with Tokyo, with Japan. Talks have begun. Credit the federal government for that. South Korea, which has stalled and hopefully, I think now restarted again after EU. We would advocate a trade agreement, and it's easy to call from. They're complex issues, we understand that, but to send the signals that we're going to move towards a trade agreement in the ASEAN, the Southeast Asian nations, would also be positive. Trade agreements provide a framework, by the way, that'll clarify the foreign investment questions that a lot of companies in Asia have in terms of what is Canada expecting of them. That was true in the EU deal, where non-resident ownership restrictions in uranium were removed, clarifying that for European companies who might want to invest in Saskatchewan uranium.
So it sounds like that might be one of the aspects of somewhat reciprocity.
Right.
What else would be?
Well, I mean, a trade deal goes beyond reciprocity.
Right.
We saw that with the EU deal. There's, specific chapters, for want of a better word, that cover issues like agriculture, where we don't have complete opening up of trade between Europe and Canada. We have, quota systems to an extent, and it's certainly freer trade. And that's what we can achieve with these agreements in Asia as well. I just think if we do believe, and we do strongly support the EU trade deal, if we think that's good for the country, we need to be pursuing that opportunities in the Asian region, and free trade agreements are certainly one way to do that.
Premier, what are the various sectors, though, that people are really talking about as it relates to how this framework might look and what we want to achieve out of it?
Well, the fastest growing middle class in the world is in Asia, and as the middle class grows, there's an intensity in their demand for higher protein in the diet. That means Saskatchewan fertilizer, or Canadian fertilizer, potash. It also means Canadian agri-food products, and in those economies as well, there's a greater demand for energy. We need to decide as a country that being an energy power is a good thing, and move our energy across our country first, and then access those markets. So food security, energy security in that region should inform, I think, the basics of our engagement, though it goes beyond that in terms of technological opportunities. But certainly food and energy are big parts of what those emerging economies are interested in. And the happy coincidence is we've got a lot of that in Canada.
And Premier, let me ask you this as well. You did mention foreign takeovers, and that perhaps having types of trade deals, trade agreements really gains some clarity in terms of what the rules are. What do you think right now as it relates to the globe's perception, the foreign perception of Canada as it relates to coming into our country, looking for deals, wanting to invest?
Well, every single country has its own review process. And I think it's fair to say that, on the whole, our country has taken a very open-minded view in terms of foreign direct investment. If you compare us to other Western free trading, free enterprise-based economies, certainly I think that's fair to say. I do, though, think the free trade agreements have the potential to provide even more clarity. And credit the federal government. They were very deliberate and doggedly determined to get this EU deal. They did. And again, I point to the example around uranium, where that deal provided the conveyance for complete clarity, frankly, the opening up of foreign investment, at least from European-based companies, in our uranium sector.
What about as it relates to pipelines and your view right now in terms of how crucial and critical it is that we get that resolved as well, and clarity there?
Well, I know with some optimism that Alberta and British Columbia are engaged in meetings with respect to that particular pipeline. Pretty hopeful about results there. We obviously have a lot to gain as a country in terms of being able to move our energy across this nation. Pretty difficult for us to go to other parts of the world that might want our energy and say, you should buy more of it. and until we have those solutions. So I just hope that we as a country start embracing the fact that we're an energy power. It would be the envy of most other nations.
It would be.
But to be an energy power, we've got to first move it to port. We've got to move it across our own jurisdictions. And I see more and more goodwill on that front, by the way. We need to make sure it's done sustainably. We need to make sure First Nations issues are addressed. But I'm pretty hopeful about the future. We have engaged provinces and a federal government, obviously, that has a vision for Canada being in a greater export position on energy.
Premier, when you say you see more goodwill from who exactly?
Well, from in the provincial capitals. Okay. I guess I'm thinking of what I'm watching between Alberta and British Columbia in terms of discussions that are happening.
Those relationships
and even,
you think are developing in a good way.
I know Ontario Premier Wynne was in Alberta, I think yesterday or on the weekend, talking about the importance of a national approach to moving energy across Canada in all its forms, renewables, I mean in electrons from renewables, frankly, and hydrocarbons, and we really do have it all in the country. It's not hyperbolic to say that. So we should act like it. We should be able to move the energy first across the country and then around to parts of the world that want it.
Let's talk a little bit about your province as well,
Sure.
in the sense that your unemployment rate is on the low side. You're looking to continue to grow. Perhaps corporate tax rate is coming down. What's going on there in terms of some of those dynamics?
Sure. We've updated our growth plan for the province. We know that it isn't the government that creates jobs. We credit obviously some good fortune we've had in the province and also our very dynamic private sector, both the small and medium and larger businesses. But governments can do some things to stay out of the way and create the right environment for growth. And so we're trying to do that. We need to be competitive from a tax perspective. You've referenced that. From a labor legislative environment, we need to be competitive. We need to have a long-term plan for infrastructure. That's highlighted in the plan. We need to be internationally engaged. We have to tell the world what we have and be stewards of the relationships that even the provinces have externally, and our focus is Asia, certainly, and the United States. And we need to focus on diversifying our economy as well. So some good news. Last year we broke our own export record. We're now more exports than British Columbia last year, and not bad for a place without any ports that we're aware of.
Right, and specifically driven by which key industries and which ones do you think will continue to grow?
Well, there's signs that our economy is increasingly diversified. Some job numbers out recently showed us actually losing net jobs in the natural resource sector, but overall gains because of growth driven in the trade sector, in manufacturing and innovation. And so there's some real hope that the economy is diversifying. Again, credit those who are responsible for it, the businesses and the people of the province, and of course the resource strength of Saskatchewan. That's a big part of it. One last point on the exports. About a third of the $32 billion is agriculture. Agriculture in this country and in our province is a rock star economically. And we see a big crop coming off in Western Canada now. But in a world that wants food security, where the fastest growing parts of the world want food security, I like Canada's chances. But again, we need to be engaged in that part of the world and even more focused than we already are. You know, that part of the world is Asia.
Let me just ask you, as it relates to commodity prices, potash prices, how does that dovetail into how you think about the province and what you can and cannot control?
Sure. Well, we plan for that. We have a rainy day fund of about $500 million for certain conditions that occur throughout the budget year. It's important to note that even with the recent potash news, even if it's off 25%, total potash revenue in our budget is about $500 million. Oil is about $1.3 billion. The overall budget's about $11 billion. So we'll manage. We'll watch the expenditures. We'll manage. We have a balanced budget. We intend to continue to have a balanced budget. And potash we're well known for, but in terms of its fiscal impact, you know, these things we think are manageable.
Premier Wall, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
appreciate it. That was Premier Wall of Saskatchewan, and do stay tuned.